forgive me if this wakes you, but we're not too far now from pulling over. So Geraldine is just around the next couple of corners. So stop to use the toilets, quick stretch of the legs. I'll hand out these little snack packs, and yeah, we'll keep on moving through to Fairley. So far this morning though, we have been travelling through the Canterbury Plains. Now the South Island, for the most part, I'm sure you've probably figured out by now, it's quite hilly, quite mountainous, so the plains here make up the largest area of flat land in the island. Also holds about half of the South Island's population just through the Canterbury Plains. It's a lot easier to get around, the climate's pretty fair, and obviously yeah, the terrain is a bit more conducive for living and farming. Historically, the area has been used for sheep farming, as has the entirety of New Zealand. We also grow a lot of cereal grains, like there's wheat growing on either side of us at the moment, young wheat. These days though, a lot of farmers have converted into dairy for New Zealand's GDP. So big money maker. It's a little bit sad though, because you know, we're supposed to be famous for the amount of sheep that we have in New Zealand, but our sheep population is dropping, the cow population is rising. Very recently actually, our sheep population has dropped below 30 million for the first time pretty much ever. Coming into Geraldine here though, Geraldine is not particularly built up for tourism at all, like some of the other towns, Tekapo, Wanaka, Queenstown, etc. So it gives you just a little insight and just a bit more everyday life. Lots of older folk through Geraldine, lots of retired farmers will come live out this way. It does make for quite a nice little township, lots of nice little gardens. Kept very pleasant. In fact, it's probably about the closest thing you'll get to a little English village here in New Zealand. As we cross this bridge, if you have a little look up the hill to the right hand side, you'll see some of the remnants of the native forest that would have covered the entirety of the plains at one point. Kind of bushy, almost prehistoric looking trees up the hill. So you get quite a bit of contrast in these more developed, built up or settled areas, especially if it's from, you know, settled by the English or the Europeans. The areas begin to look kind of English or European. So all of the deciduous trees that you'll see through here, these are all introduced. Most of New Zealand's trees are evergreens. I have only a very small number, a handful of native deciduous trees. But you end up getting a nice little mix. So yes, I'll pull over in just a second. I'll just do what you need to do, and then we'll jump back in and drive to the next town. So just remember guys, it's not here, but Fairley, the next town where we'll stop for coffee and food and whatnot. Toilet block just on the left. There's also a water fountain just ahead and to the left there as well. quite dramatically. This is about as green as you will ever see this area. It's been a particularly wet spring, so it has greened up a little bit, but for the most part it's this kind of golden brown all year round. The area is dominated, or I should say used to be dominated, by these tussock grasses that we can see on either side of us here, the bunched up grasses. The other more spread out grass, like the green grass that's growing here and that's going brown and with, is an attempt at growing European meadow grass up in this area. Didn't go too well. It doesn't really have the humidity required to keep it green for all year round. There would also have been no trees up here before humans arrived. No trees whatsoever. Our natives don't really like this soil type. You know, you could be standing on a boulder to get a photo. Just be aware that the rocks that you pick up or stand on have travelled up to 100 kilometres inside of a glacier and then being dumped, left behind as the glaciers receded up the valley to the right. So one rock, so you can have a look at the lake. I'm sure you can find it. The wee church is quite cute, little stone church built in the 1930s. Very popular with, or particularly Instagrammers these days. It's one of those photogenic spots. It's also the first week that these flowers, the lupins, are starting to come out. These weren't here last week. So that's nice. Pretty soon these are going to cover the entire area. Technically a noxious weed, but we forgive them for a couple of months over the summer. Oh, and there's also a little statue that was put up in the 1960s as a thank you to the sheepdogs, working dogs, just here on the right. Alright, please keep your eye on. So Mount Cook is down the middle of the valley there to the right, beyond the end of this lake, which is Lake Aoraki. Actually, Mount Cook today is definitely living up to its, which translates into P-U-K-A-K-I, which translates as, I suppose directly it would be bunched up water or gathering of water perhaps. In a less wordy format, version of the word Tekapo, so replace the E with an A. Somebody will come up from, say, the east coast, cross over areas like Burke's Pass, and then the drop down gathering food on the greenstone, which was a highly valued commodity for Bali. It was used to make tools, weapons, jewellery. But that's only harvested, or really only harvested, on the west coast of the South Island. That's where most of it comes from. though, is of course the tallest mountain in New Zealand. It stands at 3,724 metres above sea level where we are right now. It's interesting what metric you use to measure the mountains, because 3 kilometres in vertical height gains, quite a lot. Put it this way, if I could lift up Mount Cook, hike up into the Himalayas with it, and then drop it down next to Mount Everest, both mountains would reach to the same altitude, as they're both a 3 kilometre vertical climb from the base of the mountains to the summit. But the massive, massive difference is that the base of Mount Everest is already at 5,500 metres above sea level. So in terms of altitude, the bottom of Mount Everest is 1.5 times the altitude of the top of Mount Cook. That does give a couple of benefits for mountaineering in these lower altitude mountains, because you still get all the technicality, your real technical climbing, without the need for oxygen tanks, as most people don't tend to feel the effects of altitude until about 2,500 metres above sea level. So you'll be a bit short of breath going up to the summit, that's for sure, when you're not in what's called the danger or the death zone, like you are up in places like the Himalayas. Very, very dangerous with the low oxygen. In fact, this is where the late great Sir Edmund Hillary learned to mountaineer. Sir Ed is the gentleman who's on the back of the $5 note. In the 1940s, ended up sticking around, learning to mountaineer, and this is where he developed a lot of his hard skills before going on towards the Himalayan expeditions in the early 50s. That it looks like it's going to go. You guys who are going through to Queenstown, your transfer to the second vehicle takes place at 2:25. So we should be getting it, you know, you could do an hour and a half on the Hooker Valley if you wanted to, go up for 45, come back for 45. I doubt you'll be able to get to the end of the track unless you do trail run it. Otherwise, I can drop you down at the short walks down the Tasman Valley, which is down to the right there. You can actually see a little bit of the glacier poking out the right-hand side. So, Mount Cook often gets a little bit overshadowed by the peak that's starting to come out front left of the van here. It'll be on the left in just a second. This mountain is called Mount Sefton, and so it's sitting on the main divide which runs the length of the island. So cross over Mount Sefton, and you're actually going to slide down the Fox Glacier down towards the west coast. If you were to head up the Tasman Valley to the right there and cross those mountains, you would slide down the Franz Josef Glacier, just in case anyone's heading that way and they want to orientate themselves. So yeah, Mount Sefton in full display there. A glaciated mountainside, so you can see how the white stuff up there is rather lumpy, quite textured, full of cracks and crevasses. So that is all hard. Good day for it. Yeah, this is all, think about it, this is all hard ice up there. So this will all be here through the summer. If you stay, why wouldn't you be looking at the mountain? Once you get around, because I imagine a lot of you guys who are staying here will come out and do the Hooker Valley track at some point. I'll show you how to link up the village with this track without having to come down the road. But once you get around the corner of this of the Mount Cook range there, the ridge line that leads up to Mount Cook comes out, and it is glorious.